Check Podcasts. Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. This is Chamber Chats, and I would like to begin, as always, by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations, in particular the Songhees and the Esquimalt. It is our privilege and honor to live and work alongside them every day. Chamber Chats is made possible through the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. And look at us back in studio at Czech Television in the podcasting studio as we just creep toward where we're going to be going forward out of all this. One of the really unique things about living around here is that you have an option to attend a university that's in a castle. It's one of the most unique places in the world for post-secondary education. It, of course, is Royal Roads University. We want to talk about the campus and the curriculum and what Royal Roads is all about with the President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Philip Steenkamp, who's joining us now. Doctor, good morning, and how are you?
I'm well, Bruce. Thank you for the invitation.
I don't know why I said good morning, because it's actually not, but whatever. We're all busy. So Royal Roads, Dr. Steenkamp, is a model that, it's kind of like UVic and Camosun, which we're all very familiar with, but there are differences about the way Royal Roads operates. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned UVic and Camosun because the three of us actually constitute a post-secondary ecosystem here, and we complement each other. We're all quite different. So Royal Roads was established in 1995 as a special purpose university with a very particular mandate to focus on applied and professional programs and to serve the needs of the labor market. So it is quite different from a traditional university. The other thing that distinguishes it is that we offer our programs in online format, in an on-campus format, and in a blended format. So students can take programming online and then come onto campus for intensive residencies. And I'd say about 70% of our students actually elect to take their courses in that blended format. The other thing is we are primarily a graduate university, so 70% of our students are graduate, and a lot of them are mid-career professionals. So typically older than you would see at a traditional university, the average age of our students. So that's really what distinguishes us from other universities. And in particular, I'd emphasize that applied focus. We really focus on real world problems and dealing with real world issues.
We talk about the function that a post-secondary plays in a local community. I know people that have gone through Royal Roads, we all do, and people that have gone through UVic and through Camosun. But your students really do have, you mentioned who they are. There's a very broad spectrum of origin as where they come from around the world and around the country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have about 70% of our students are Canadian and 30% are international, so coming from other countries. And of that contingent of Canadian students, we've got students from across this country. So, quite a few obviously from here in BC, but we've got a very strong contingent from Alberta, from Ontario, and then from the provinces, the other provinces as well. And they come from a variety of fields. If you look at a typical cohort, you've got students from the private sector, from the public sector, and other places as well. And the international students come from all over. We probably at any one time have about 100 countries represented among our student body here. Right now, we have a particularly large contingent of students from India. But that varies over time. So we've got students from Asia, we've got students from Africa, we've got students from Latin America, and some European students as well.
So when we take a look, and again, I'm sorry to keep comparing to other post-secondaries, but the stream we most often see is that a student will be graduating from secondary school, and they'll talk to career counselors, and they'll figure out the career path they want to take, and then they will apply, and they will submit their application, then they're accepted into university. Your students don't follow that flow. So tell me about that whole process of being accepted into Royal Roads.
Yeah, it is different. You are right to point that out, Bruce. So we do have traditional undergraduate students, but those are students who largely come to us to complete their undergraduate programming. So they've done 2 years somewhere else. They come and do third and fourth year with us. But most of our students are graduate students. Most of them are mid-career. So these are people who are looking to change their careers or upgrade their skill sets or go in a different direction. And so we offer an array of programming which allows them to do that. So they would typically contact us, and then we'd put them in touch with an advisor. We talk about their career objectives, and then sort of match them to the right program. The other thing to note about us is, we will also admit students who don't have traditional academic credentials. Because we value life and work experience as well. In fact, in some of our programs, you have to have a certain number of years working in order to be eligible to apply, because we believe that life and work experience, are important credentials in and of themselves. So it is a different way of evaluating skill sets and of admitting students.
You mentioned that certainly with international students or out-of-province students, you had an element of online learning in place before all of this stuff came along. So I want to come back to that, but first I want to say, without simplifying the question, how did the pandemic interrupt and disrupt the function and flow of Royal Roads University?
Yeah, so as you pointed out, I mean, we've had close to 25 years of experience in offering online education. So we were relatively better positioned than other institutions were, but it required an adjustment for us as well, in a number of ways. As I mentioned, most of our students are actually in blended programming. So there is an on-campus component, typically a 1 or 2 week residency a couple of times a year. So we had to move all of those residencies online. And that was challenging because these are intensive, immersive residencies, which go from early in the morning to late at night. And so finding a way to move those online was, I suppose, one of our biggest challenges. We also have international students who are in our on-campus face-to-face programming. So we had to move those programs online as well. And then, of course, for our staff and our faculty, at the beginning of the pandemic, most of us moved to work from home, as most other organizations did. So that was the other, I think, major disruption and adaptation for us. But relatively, we were better positioned, I would say, than many. And in fact, some institutions reached out to us to ask us for assistance in making that transition from in-person on-campus programming to online programming, because you can't simply just move stuff overnight. And there is a kind of qualitative difference between remote learning, emergency remote learning, I would call it, and truly interactive, engaging online learning.
100 countries represented on campus at Royal Roads is quite impressive. Next, I want to talk about international students and international study as it applies at Royal Roads. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is Dr. Philip Steenkamp. He is the President and Vice Chancellor of Royal Roads University. And President, when you talk about international students, there is that whole element of global education. We all learn from each other. We have a better understanding of other cultures when we get into a mix like that. But the other part of it I want to talk about is the economic impact, the bottom line that international students have on the ability of the university to function. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, and it's a really important point you make. Most universities across this country over the last few years, I would say probably over the last 10 years, have increasingly relied on international student tuition in an environment where provincial budgets are constrained, and we haven't seen significant increases from provincial governments. We have increasingly come to rely on international students for revenue. It's not the reason we do it, of course. We do it for the reasons you mentioned, and that is because of our commitment to global citizenship and the richness that those students bring to our campus. But the reality is that we have all become dependent to some extent on the revenue we get from international student tuition. Now, we invest that revenue wisely, in order to improve the experience for all of our students. And in fact, domestic students benefit from the presence of international students because of that kind of cross-cultural exchange and collaboration that can occur, but also because we now have the resources to make the investments in programs that we might not have without international students.
So the admission process, I want to go back to that, for domestic students and international students is somewhat the same, but there must be some differences. So if a student living in Brazil decides that they want to approach the idea of going to school at Royal Roads, what's that protocol? How do they do that?
Yeah, well, they can apply just as a domestic student might apply, say, online. Typically, though, the international students we get are connected to us through agents. There are agents who work in these different markets, in India and China and Brazil and other places, agents who work in these markets and try and match students up with the right opportunity in Canada. So we work with a group of agents internationally, and we spend time with them, making sure that they get the kind of orientation that they need and that they understand our institution and what our institution offers, so we can get a best match or a best fit with students. So that's how a lot of it happens. Some will apply directly. Some students might apply directly, but a lot come through agents. Then we have a recruitment team that travels internationally. Now, through the last 2 years, they haven't been able to do that. So they've been offering webinars, as an example. Webinar on, say, this set of programs at Royal Roads. And then we'll advertise that broadly, get a lot of people watch that webinar, ask questions during and after that webinar. And then we can connect them with advisors if they're interested in coming here. The other thing I would say is word of mouth is really important. So if you've had a contingent of students, as we have had, the example I'll give you again is India. Our Masters of Global Management program is very attractive to Indian students. And I think part of it is because of word of mouth. It's a quality program. And students tell their friends and families about it. And so word spreads in communities where we have international students.
Yeah, we've done sessions through the Chamber where a number of your international students have participated with us, and they talk about how enriching the experience is to be at Royal Roads and be in Canada and learn through all of that. So, not having them for the cultural benefit with us right now, the financial impact meant that you had to change some things too. It's all coming back, but you had to make some adjustments according to the lack of revenue, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for the team I have here, because we were able to manage to get through the last 2 years without running a deficit. We were one of a very, very small number of post-secondary institutions who were able to balance our budget, but we balanced the budget, literally on a dime. So we were extremely lucky to do that. We did see a decline in revenues because obviously a lot of international students were not able to get here. We saw a little bit of softening initially in domestic enrollments, but those went up in the second year. But we were able to balance because we were able to reduce expenditures commensurately. So as an example, there was no travel. So that's can be a pretty big expense item from year to year. There were none of the usual events we do as well. So that's another reduction. And so we were able to balance just by drawing down expenses. I made a commitment at the beginning of the pandemic to the entire community here that we would not lay anybody off through the pandemic. And it was a commitment which really paid off because people felt very committed to the organization. Some people who saw their jobs literally disappear, their functions disappear because of the pandemic, we were able to redeploy to other areas where we needed extra help. And so we were able, the analogy I would use is we were able to build a bridge together to get us safely to the other side. And we're not quite safely on the other side, but we are pretty close there. And I was very proud that we were able to do that. And it really strongly reflects one of the values of Royal Roads, which is to be caring. So a caring organization, really informed our approach to how we managed our human resources through this pandemic.
And speaking of caring, you have a spectacular facility and the grounds and everything at Royal Roads. I think most of us have been there, but I want to talk about taking care of a place like that next. Chamber Chats today, our guest is Dr. Philip Steenkamp, who is the President and Vice Chancellor of Royal Roads University. What a spectacular place that is. I mean, it's a tourist attraction as well as a post-secondary facility. Really interesting history and an evolution. So let's go over that and talk a little bit about the history of the building and the grounds.
Yeah, well, I think as you mentioned in your land acknowledgement at the beginning, Bruce, we are on the lands of the Kasapsan and Lekwungen families and ancestors, and it's really important to remember that this was always an important site and continues to be an important site for Indigenous peoples. The Camas meadows here were an important source of starch, as an example. Food was collected in the forest. There were clam beds in the lagoon. Obviously, the fishery was important. So that's a really important part of the history. The colonial history here, of course, is all tied up with the Dunsmuir family and the building of Hatley Park, this grand Edwardian estate. And at its height, this was a grand Edwardian estate, which functioned as a farm as well. And we've been left with these wonderful legacy buildings, most notably Hatley Castle. But during the military era here too, the military built some lovely old buildings as well, which we were lucky to inherit. And then from 1995, when we became a public university, we have built new facilities, and we have very lovingly taken care of the old facilities as well. But as you might imagine, with any campus like this, there's some real challenges too. Old buildings take a lot of work and care, and the one I'm sitting in right now takes a lot of work in particular. But we absolutely love it. It's been the site of a number of movies, Hatley Castle, the X-Men movies, and Deadpool, and the Incredible Hulk, and other things like that. And we are also hugely proud of our world-renowned gardens and hiking trails, of course, too. And we have a very ambitious plan underway right now to work on the revitalization of our Japanese garden, which is over 100 years old. We got a great Japanese garden designer, Mr. Hayato Ogawa, working on a design for us on that garden. And we are bringing the old Edwardian kitchen garden, which is in the walled garden area, back to life by starting fruit production there again. Just last week, in fact, we launched our new kitchen garden, which will have a number of phases. The first phase is growing food in what we are calling the giving garden. All the food grown in that garden is food that we will be donating to the community and to food banks, as an example. But over time, we will expand food production in that garden to supply our own cafeteria here. And we're going to expand the orchard. We're going to put in more beehives. And we're going to look at the restoration of that fabulous glass greenhouse that we have in that garden as well. All of this takes a huge amount of money, and that's why we've launched a fundraising campaign called Vision in Bloom. This is our second year to request community support to preserve some of the heritage aspects of these gardens and to renew and revitalize these lands, because we think we can make this place a living laboratory, for our students, our faculty, and for the community. And I'm really committed to engaging with the community on these lands. Somebody once described them to me as, the West Shore of Stanley Park. And to me, it's that and more.
It really is. Amanda and I make a point of going at least once per season to walk through the garden just to see how it changes and what it looks like through the different seasons. And I ride my bike through there, as I mentioned to you too. I want to go back to Vision in Bloom for a second. We might as well, let's make a plug for that. Let's tell people how they can be a part of that and help support that campaign.
Yeah, so I would encourage people to go on our website. We have a page there. Vision in Bloom is the name of the campaign. It's a fundraising campaign. We're looking at raising $250,000 this year. And as I mentioned, the focus will be on the kitchen garden, on the restoration of the greenhouse, and the revitalization as well of that Japanese garden. We've had some wonderful gifts over the last year. We got an especially large gift from a family in Langford to help us with the Japanese garden revitalization. And we've got gifts also to help us with the kitchen garden, but we always need more. This is a huge property, as you know. We've got 565 acres, which we take care of on behalf of the Department of National Defense. And we really want to make this a destination garden, for this community, but for all of Canada as well. And I really do think it has that potential. Those of you, as you've mentioned, Bruce, you've been here, you can just see through the seasons what an amazing place this is. So I'd encourage folks to go on our website, and you will see a link there, a button there to our Vision in Bloom fundraising campaign, and also look out in the Times Colonist and in other media as well, because we will be launching sort of different stories and mini campaigns throughout the spring and summer.
Yeah, we always take or send visitors to the campus all the time to look around. I mean, who doesn't want to go see a castle? That's something you can see when you go there. And when you mentioned that you're doing these adjustments, for example, to increase your local food production, that's a way of increasing your food security and making an effort to address climate change. So in practice, you're doing that, but you also address that in curriculum too. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, starting food production is obviously a good thing to do in and of itself. I mean, food insecurity is rife in our community. I think, given the illegal Russian invasion of the Ukraine and Ukraine's central role in producing food, I think we are going to see some significant food challenges later this summer. And so we need to start growing food closer to home, and we've seen disruptions in supply chains and all of that over the last couple of years. So for those reasons, it's important. But it is also reflected in our teaching, our learning, and our research. We have made a commitment to focus on some of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of them is ending hunger. And so I would like to see more programming in the area of food and food security generally. And then more broadly, we have a really great array of programs in the sustainability and climate action field as well. We've got programs in environmental science, environmental practice, in community sustainability. We've got programs in climate action, emergency and disaster management. And we are strongly committed to taking action, on climate change. And we recently had the board approve a new climate action plan, which runs from 2022 this year to 2027. So everything we do here on the land in this living laboratory, I call it, you will see reflected in our teaching, learning, and our research as well.
It's a fascinating place. Historically, it's interesting to look at it now. The gardens are breathtaking. The curriculum is very diverse. We're out of time, but when you get a chance, go to the Royal Roads website when you make your Vision in Bloom contribution. Also take a look at their relationship with the Canadian Football League. That's something else to take a look at when you visit the website. You're a busy guy. We very much appreciate your time, and let's do this again soon. Dr. Philip Steenkamp, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much, Bruce. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Dr. Philip Steenkamp is the President and Vice Chancellor of Royal Roads University. I'm Bruce Williams. That's Chamber Chats. Thanks again to Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chats.